And we're live. I'm Tyler.
DJ here.
DJ's still there. Welcome back to Pours and Pixels. We are hanging out with Nate Purkeypile tonight. Nate, how are you?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm doing well as well. It is a Friday night, and I've got a good drink here in front of me, and excited to chat with you about the Axis Unseen.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about it.
Before we get going, we're gonna go ahead and talk through our pours for the evening. And as tradition has it, I probably need to stop saying this, but the guest will go first. So, what you drinking tonight, man?
All right, tonight I have the Manor Hill Fest beer. That's like a Maryland brewery.
Okay, is that local to you?
Yeah, it's like in Columbia, Maryland, is where I think the brewery is.
Okay.
Oh, that's not actually far from where I'm at. It's like a few hours on the road for me.
Oh yeah,
I'm down in Virginia, so I'm not very far. But I might, hopefully, if they have a distributor, I'm gonna go look for that if it's any good.
Yeah, I think their beer's gotten a lot better over time.
Oh, that's always good.
I think that's the first guest craft beer we've had too.
That might be.
Which I appreciate.
Yeah, no, I'm a big craft beer guy.
Yeah.
So I can go get Coors Light too if.
Well, I don't judge. I would drink basically anything from standard Budweiser up to the fanciest beer you could find. But I'm generally a whiskey guy. DJ, what are you drinking tonight?
Oh, tonight I'm double fisting Southern Tier Brewing Company, their standard IPA. It's 7%. It's not bad. It's probably the best one I've had from this pack that I got. I'm double fisting them because I have to fix my wife's car, and we got quoted for like $1,000, and it happens to be the one thing that's not covered under all the warranties and certified pre-owned shit that we got. Yeah. So like, I am depressed tonight. So I'm drinking this beer. It's not horrible. It kind of tastes like Busch Light concentrate.
Jesus.
Yeah,
you describe that as not horrible?
It's not horrible. It's not good. It's not like, don't get me wrong, don't get twisted, don't get it fucked up. It's not good. It's drinkable.
All right.
Yeah, Southern Tier, I still need to step their game up. But I mean, this is the best out of the pack that I've had. So,
gotcha.
Whatever.
That's actually my favorite brewery. I think they have a lot of really good ones. Yeah,
really?
I really like their hazy. The hazy one is awesome.
Do they have like a normal hazy?
Yeah.
What is it called?
I think it might just be called like hazy.
Okay, because
something really boring like that. Yeah, because I had like a variety pack that had one of those.
I had their.
Maybe it has some other name I'm forgetting.
Yeah, I had their 2 times haze last night. Was it last night or 2 nights or whatever?
I don't know.
And that was
recently.
Pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had this one called like New Haze, and I don't know if it's just the flavor profile of it that I didn't like, but
maybe that's the one I'm thinking of that I like.
It's like pulpy. That's what it reminded me of, drinking like pulpy orange juice. I don't know.
A little bit, yeah.
I got some recommendations in this area. If you can find them up there, we can talk after the show. There's some really good beer in Virginia, especially Northern Virginia, that you might appreciate. So we'll talk.
Beer good. Is fair game for the show, by the way.
Content.
It's pours and pixels, so
it's true.
We can talk about any of it. Yeah, so it's interesting that Southern Tier is your favorite brewery because we were just talking a lot of shit about them on one of our previous episodes.
That's true.
I think we both got the same like sampler pack, and I had stuff from them in the past that I thought was really good, but was seasonal. Like I think they make their like pumpkin beer that's as far as pumpkin fallish beers go.
They make
pumpkin is them.
Yeah. Okay, I've had
that's
that
a
one.
really
like
good one from them. Yeah,
that one is
but
like
I didn't care for that hazy either.
Yeah, that pumpkin beer is actually really good. I remember because I had it. Oh man, it's been years ago now. But like, out of all the pumpkin beer, like that one will put you on your ass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There was a place in St. John's Town Center when we were stationed down there that it was like a burger joint, but they had like a walk-up bar window kind of thing that was open to the street. And they had pumpkin there, but they served it in a glass that had like pumpkin pie spice and like I'm trying to. What is it like? A graham cracker crust around the edge of the glass. So when you would take a sip of it, it was almost like you were getting actual pumpkin pie mixed in. It was wild.
That does not sound good.
It's way better than Busch Light concentrate or whatever the fuck you just said was drinkable. So.
Well, that's fair. That's
anyway,
fair.
I'm once again bringing up the whiskey train tonight, but I'm drinking the third quarter 2021 release of Booker's Bourbon. This is called. There's a batch, a Bardstown batch. There it is, and it is 6 years and 5 months old at 125 proof. Booker's is a really, really solid part of like the Jim Beam, Knob Creek portfolio.
You say 125?
125.5 proof, yeah.
Oh, 0.5.
Not
That
fucking
0.5
around.
makes the extra difference.
No, this will be all of it. This is like a regular, maybe just an inch pour. Like I'm not gonna.
That's gasoline.
That stuff will burn a hole through your esophagus if you're not ready. I do have I have one downstairs that is an Old Forester single barrel. So that's a Brown Forman product. That's from the same like overall company that like owns Jack Daniels and all that.
Yeah.
But Old Forester, they made a single barrel barrel select program last year, and they're all barrel proof, like uncut, unfiltered. So essentially, they knock a hole in the barrel, right, and just bottle it straight out of there. And I want to say it's 134 proof, but it like I've had 130 proof whiskey that's really good, that's tasty. This stuff is like, I mean, it's awful. It's you could set it on fire for sure, but like you have to put it over ice or it's not good. And it's one of those that like the whiskey community was really snobby about. Like you couldn't find it. Everyone was hunting them down. This is the best bourbon ever, blah, blah, blah. I got my hands on one and I'm like, it's terrible. It's so hot. You can't, for me at least, I can't enjoy it without ice. And I'm normally a whiskey neat guy, so it's rowdy.
I feel like it's that way with some of the fancy beers. People are like, oh, it's so good. And it's like some 20% thing. It's like tastes like molasses.
Yeah.
20% beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, does that even count?
Yeah, that's malt liquor at that point.
Yeah, it's not beer anymore. It's moved on. It's evolved. That is Jesus Christ. What is that? It's got to be some kind of stout, right? Like a dragon's milk or like an imperial.
Overseas, I
some
know
kind
they
of
do
super dark one like that.
a lot of those.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever had like dragon's milk before, but it's
I don't think
it's
so.
rough. It is.
I had it a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it was fine. Like it wasn't disgusting, but it's certainly not like something I'm going to go out and buy myself generally. So,
which one did you get? Because they have like vanilla and chocolate. And I think they have a coffee one too.
I think we had their original Dragon's Milk Stout.
Oh, so you didn't have like I had like the flavored one, like the chocolate one, and then like it was gross.
Yeah,
Chocolate beer is gross.
I believe that. I did have one time from Trophy Brewing here, actually, that you went to in Raleigh. That was called the Milky Way, and it tasted like a chocolatey, like Milky Way bar. It was interesting, at least, not disgusting.
Anyway,
yeah. So now that we're talking about that, let's get the big obvious stuff out of the way. You worked at a really, 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 really popular game studio for a while, I think. And I want to talk to you about that for like 10 minutes, maybe less, and then we're going to move along because I think that your project that you're working on now is super interesting, and I want to get to that. That said, having worked at Bethesda for a while,
14 years,
a lot of big name projects coming through there at the time. Fallout, basically all of them, 3, 4, 76, Skyrim.
Yeah.
Were you there for Oblivion or no?
I came like partway onto Fallout 3. They were like about a year into Fallout 3 when I came on.
Okay, cool. Did I say Skyrim already? If not, Skyrim is like the world's most popular game.
Starfield for about a year also. Yeah.
I imagine that's something that we probably cannot chat about too much, and that is totally understandable.
Gotta love NDAs. Gotta love them.
Yeah, they come with the territory. But what was your experience on that? What was kind of your role in some of those projects?
Like my main focus was world art and lighting. So I did a lot of like kits for level designers to use that they would piece together to build the dungeons, kind of like, Lego pieces in a way that got more and more flexible over time. And the lighting part was like, I lit most of like Fallout 3 and Skyrim and Fallout 4 and some of 76 also. Was lead lighting artist on Starfield. Wow. So I had like a split job. Like even back then, there was often like lighting departments at other companies. But for me, it was like, oh, on the side, light Skyrim. So had to be kind of fast at it.
It's a hell of a side project.
Yeah. A lot of ground to cover.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting talking to you about that, just because like those are the Elder Scrolls games specifically. I would say it was probably always more my cup of tea. Fallout I enjoy, but I wouldn't say it was like my favorite Bethesda title. But Elder Scrolls Oblivion like changed me as a gamer generally. I used to be like basically first-person shooters and sports games, maybe some racing games, and then I played that and I was like, oh my god, I think I might be a nerd. This is the best thing I've ever played. There's like elves and shit all this. This is amazing. And that's what happened. It's true. I'm a huge high fantasy nerd now. Like I love all things fantasy currently. I'm a very happy guy. There's a lot of cool stuff on TV currently, so like I'm a, you know what I mean? But yeah, I just, it's really interesting getting a chance to chat with someone who had a hand in those projects. That said, you worked there for, you said 14 years.
Yeah, 14 years.
A really long time to do anything, actually.
Yeah, especially in the games industry where, most people are, I don't know, 3 to 6 years often.
Yeah.
Game industry, overworked, underappreciated.
That's a lot of industries, I think.
The game industry, I think, is worse because the consumer base is so large and so toxic that if one little detail is like flawed or there's a bug, like they rarely get like really good credit. It's mostly just like shit on, like the game devs don't care, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah,
like,
I think if the internet
lazy devs.
Yeah. Like, and we used to kind of do it. And then after we've talked to some of you guys for a while now, it's kind of like, oh no, actually, like, those guys work pretty fucking hard. Like, I couldn't do what you guys do, honestly. Like, it's nuts. Especially, I just learned about crunching recently in the industry, and it's a huge thing. And I read your story on Twitter, and that's nuts. Like, we were in the military, and like our life sucked every day, but like, man, at least there was some benefits to that, right? At least got like 10% discount at restaurants. Like, shit.
Yeah, my least favorite crunch was, I mentioned that in that story where I would have to do the solidarity crunch. It's like where I literally had no work to do even. I just had to be there. Like, that is dumb.
Yeah, that's super dumb.
That's some military shit there.
That's military shit.
No one can go home until 5 o'clock. Why? All the work's done. Oh, because other people still have work they need to do. Like, but our work is done.
Yeah, once I snuck a monkey with hooks for hands and like herpes sores all over it into Aeon Flux just because I had nothing better to do. And I just hit it everywhere throughout the game.
That's amazing.
Really?
Like, I'm bored. I'm going to put a monkey with hooks for hands everywhere.
That makes me want to go get that game and go find them now.
Oh, man.
You'd be like one of the 5 people who have bought that game.
What was it called? Aeon Flux?
Aeon Flux. Yeah, I worked on that at Terminal Reality. It was like a tie-in with the movie that came out around the same time with like Charlize Theron. We had like 7 months to make that game.
That's crazy.
That's not a long time to make a game.
No.
Yeah.
Like, that's really fast. It's a big turnaround.
Yeah.
Outside of game development, you ran a beer fest for a while, right? That explains that you're the first guest we've had on that's had like some beer class. That's what we'll call it.
Yeah, I ran a beer fest for about 10 years, and that was, kind of inspired by the movie Beer Fest. It has, that warning, like, don't do this. So obviously I did that.
Had to try it. Yeah.
Me and some friends ran that, and it was, competitive drinking games, usually about like 100 to 110 people. And another interesting side of it is that it was effectively a kind of like an East Coast game developers conference.
Oh, cool.
Because people would come from all over, from like North Carolina. We've had people that would fly from Canada.
Yeah.
So it was like primarily game devs. And then we would even do like game jams to try and test out the games and see what works and try and mix it up every year.
Yeah. Interesting. I live like maybe 30 minutes from Epic. their big headquarters down here. I'm in North Carolina for people listening who don't already know that, but yeah, that's really interesting. Like, what made you? I mean, you saw the movie and we're just like, we have to try this. It sounds awesome.
Yeah, we were like, hey, that sounds pretty fun, and we like making and designing games, so let's try this and see how it goes. And like the first one was in like one of my friend's apartments, and it was way too packed for that. And then we moved to a friend's house, and it was also way too packed for that. And he was like, I'm never hosting that again. So
yeah.
Then we moved to like, big park pavilions where we had plenty of space, and that's pretty much where we stuck. And it was like
that's
a success
so
year
dope.
after year.
Beerfest is super underrated. Beerfest is a super underrated movie. Like that movie is so good. It is so good. I love every single second of that fucking movie.
Yeah,
and the fact that you got to the fact that you like did your own beer fest, I think that's like probably the coolest thing ever. I've never actually been to one, and I really want to go, like really bad.
Yeah, hopefully start it up again sometime. Maybe once my kids are a little bit older.
If you do, let me know, because like I said, I'm only a few hours from you. I will drive up there.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's like the longest flip cup table I've ever seen in my life.
Oh man.
Ooh. Oh. I'm getting college flashbacks now.
Fuck. Yep. This is the PTSD's coming in now. So that being said, if you had to guess, I know you said earlier Southern Tier is probably your favorite brewery. If you had to have one beer forever from now on, what would it be?
Oh, one beer forever? I'm going to have to represent my Oregon roots and go with like Busch beer.
Okay.
Oh, Busch.
Nice, solid session beer.
Busch is a solid choice because the beer is fine. It's not special, but it's not bad. But
yeah,
the company is the company is really good. They plant like a tree for every 30 pack you buy. They do a whole bunch of like extra stuff during hurricanes. They stop canning beer and they can like water. Like Busch, Anheuser-Busch as a company is actually like a really good company. So I that's a solid answer.
That's way more thought out than I would have expected. I would have been like, this one's crushable. Let's go with that.
Listen, I'm from the Midwest, man. We're all about Busch, okay?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
My family's all about like getting the camo cans when those come out.
Yep. Come November time, we get those orange camo cans. They come in Busch and Busch Light now, by the way.
This explains so much to me. I had so many questions that I don't know that I need to ask now, but I'm going to do it anyway for the listeners.
Wondering why I make a hunting game now. You know my background.
let's jump into that. The Axis Unseen. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I mean, like the elevator pitch is that it's a game where you're hunting monsters from folklore to heavy metal. And it's leaning more towards like the hunting simulator side of stuff as opposed to, say, Monster Hunter or something. It's like far more action oriented and stuff. In this game, you're like paying attention to their tracks and the wind direction. Only in this case, instead of just, like a deer running away, if it notices you, it'll be a monster that will come and eat your face.
You get to die painfully if you fuck up.
Yeah.
And that sounds like high stakes hunting there. Like it's like everything you hunt's a grizzly bear, essentially. Not literally, but like that's the danger level, maybe, or more.
Yeah,
maybe it's worse.
Because like I've been playing like Hunter Call of the Wild, and I can't help but think, but what if there were monsters?
yeah. DJ and I played a lot of that in the last probably year, I would say.
It's so good.
You played it way before me, and then you bought me the game because I was like, I don't want to play that. It doesn't sound interesting. And then we played the shit out of it for a while.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Dude, it's really fun.
I like 120 hours in that game.
Oh, yes, me too. I had it on I bought it like 3 different times now because I bought it for Tyler. I had it on Xbox One, and then I bought it on PC. But the reason I got into it was because when my son was born, playing games online, not really a thing, right? Mm-hmm. Infants need shit every 4 or 5 minutes, but in that game, like waiting is a thing in that game. So it was perfect. So I could like put the controller down while I was in like a tree or a bush, and then like run, like change my son's diaper or get him like a bottle or something, and then come back to the game and like a whitetail would come up, and I'd be like, oh yeah, shit, I'm gonna
take the shot now.
Perfect timing.
Oh, it's so good. Man. That game is great. That's what kind of drew me to your game in the first place was because it was like hunting, but it's folklore beast, and I'm like, oh, okay, let's do it.
Take my money.
Yeah, I'm all about this.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask, like, kind of what, did you grow up hunting? Was this something that, like, you have some roots in that made you want to kind of dive into the hunting tracking bit? Like, what were some of the inspirations that kind of drove you to want to make a game like this?
I mean, I basically grew up in the middle of nowhere. Like, my dad hates it when I say that. He's like, oh, you exaggerated. There's not even that many trees. But I grew up in the forest, effectively. Like, this town I grew up on had no stoplights, even. It was definitely middle of nowhere. So I spent a lot of my childhood running around in the forest, pretending there were monsters and, like, getting in trouble in class for writing all these horror stories and stuff. So
that's awesome.
My overactive imagination. It's like my country roots. I guess that's where it kind of comes from.
Yeah.
And I just like the pacing of those games.
So. I can relate because I grew up in a town of like 2,000 people, and the county I lived in was one of 7 counties in the United States that didn't have a stoplight. And when we got a stoplight downtown, because it's like a big tourist destination now, it confused people. Like, they didn't know what it was. Like, it turned red and they'd drive through it and be like, what is that? It got so bad that the cops they'd pull people over and they wouldn't even give them tickets because even the cops were like blowing it sometimes because like they're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, in my town they did put one in once, but then everyone would end up just like sitting there and it's like, dude, there's no cars. This is stupid.
You have to go.
That's funny. Man, it's interesting actually that all 3 of us, I think, grew up in areas that were fairly rural, and hunting is like part of life. At least, I mean, I grew up in the Carolinas. So the thing actually that jumped out to me that I thought was interesting is when I'm thinking about people's backgrounds and like how do they get into this sort of stuff. Tracking is not something that we really do unless we shoot something here. Whereas I know in other areas of the country, they track to shoot. I mean, you have to track after you shoot anyway, but, we were always like in tree stands because the Carolina, like where I'm from, there's no sight lines past like 75 yards unless you're on a power line. So there's nowhere to really track. If you walk over a hill, animals right in front of you, jumps up and takes off. But yeah, I was just curious about like, did you grow up kind of tracking things, or was that just like a part of hunting culture that you wanted to explore?
I mean, my dad was super into hunting and he took me hunting once, but I guess I would describe that more of like, we drank beer in the woods.
Okay. Yeah.
So
also can relate to that.
Tried to find stuff, but nothing happened really. But
oh my God, I was describing my childhood every November.
I had an archery range in our backyard.
Yep.
Like,
oh yeah,
running around.
Did you guys
with,
have
like,
the 3D
guns.
Targets?
What do you mean by the 3D targets?
Like not like
talking about there.
So my dad was exclusively a whitetail hunter when it comes to archery, but he like would not use a gun for basically the entire time I was growing up, unless I went with him. But we had like a lot of people have like the square archery targets that have like 3 or 4 different bullets on them. My dad had like a no shit like a deer, like a big
like big decoy deer.
Yeah, like a huge decoy deer. Well, not huge, like a life size one, but it had like the vital areas kind of like outlined for target areas for you to shoot at. But
I've seen those. Yeah,
we had like 2 or 3 of those.
Yeah, we just had hay bales.
Yeah. Okay.
It's usually like a hay bale or a big square piece of foam with a target. You staple the target on.
Spray paint. Like, here's a black dot. Shoot that thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh man. Cool. No, I think.
Wait, quick question.
What's up, DJ?
Because you're from Oregon. Your guys' deer season, is it like a customary thing? Like when rifle season starts, that you go to like deer camp and like you have a couple weeks out there deer camp and you're mostly drinking beer and hooting and hollering and like rarely ever hunting and hoping that somebody gets a deer so you can make like venison stew or something.
Yeah, that's where my dad would often go, and I'm pretty sure they were just like drinking whiskey and playing poker most of the time.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's deer camp right there.
I do feel like I missed out on deer camp in the Southeast. That's not something that's...
You're invited to come with me back up to Michigan.
Traditional. Yeah, I'm going to need to make that happen at some point. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but I would love to check it out.
That's a good time, I promise you.
So Nate, jumping back over the Axis Unseen, like when you're hunting these beasts, you say beasts from like folklore and things like that. What kind of folklore are we talking? Are we talking like all folklore? Are we talking like I'm imagining like creatures from The Witcher 3 right now. What are we hunting?
So, I mean, the general idea behind the world of the Axis Unseen is that there's this world outside of our own, sort of connecting everywhere in the world. Because it kind of struck me as odd. It's like, why does everyone have like their own Sasquatch myth and stuff? Like, why are these things all similar? Yep. It's like, so they actually all came from this place and like leak out sometimes to our world. And that's why there's these similarities. So the idea is to like pull from a lot of those, and some of them are going to be like amalgamations of different ideas, and some from different areas from all over. And
that sounds really neat. So you're
taking, not just one biome that way too.
Yeah. Oh, so you're taking like multiple real world, like multi-region myths, and bringing those in as inspiration for some of the creatures.
Yeah, because it's not like any one of those particular things is true. It's like there's something else, and everyone's kind of just describing their own interpretation of it as they like run into it in the world.
That is a really neat idea. But you're right, though. It is interesting. Like everywhere you go, they've got like some type of myth about, like you said, like a Sasquatch or, a sea monster that's like, there's
a whole bunch.
It's interesting.
Like the Mothman, you have the Jersey Devil, Sasquatch, the Yeti. I mean,
even amongst like various like nationalities and things like that too. I'm thinking about Elizabeth and Ricardo. They used to tell me that they had like their grandmother had like a Baba Yaga kind of thing that they used to talk to them about in Spanish culture. I can't remember what it was called.
Chupacabra.
No, it's not the fucking Chupacabra. It was a lady that used to murder.
Is it the La Llorona or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I never heard of that.
Yeah, it's creepy. It's really, I think they actually made a movie about it fairly recently in the last couple of years, because I saw the trailer.
That was pretty good, actually. That's on my list to check out.
Okay, cool. So, well, I'm glad to know I wasn't crazy. I was like, I'm pretty sure they told me about something like that. But yeah, no, that's really interesting to kind of think about. I wanted to kind of ask, like, when it comes to the hunting tracking mechanics, like how detailed are you envisioning that people are going to have to get when it comes to like navigating the environments and making sure that you have the tools you need to hunt? Like what type of game mechanics can we expect?
It's all like HUD free in the game, so it's all about paying attention to your surroundings and stuff, and that's part of why I like stylize the game a little bit, because it turns out, hey, tracking is actually incredibly difficult. Right. So it's mostly like flat colors and stuff, but then you can see the tracks and like you could see the scent particles if you're paying attention, paying attention to the wind direction. And navigation also, like there's no mini map or anything. Like you'll have a map, but it's not going to even show you where you are. So I'm very deliberate with how I've designed the world because of that.
Landmarks and things like that you'll be able to pull. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Cool. So you'd be like, hey, obviously that thing is to the north, and you can basically triangulate your position. Because I really like that feeling of like being out in the woods and you like pull out the map and you're like, wait, where am I? And like looking at it. And I'd like to sort of replicate that feeling, because I want you to be thinking and paying attention as a player, and not just knowing like I follow the line and I do the thing.
There's a much more rewarding experience for the end user at the end of, as a more manual endeavor, simulation, whatever you want to call it, right? But HUDless games I love, and you don't get those often. But even games where they do HUD well, where like, hey, we're going to take this off your screen like 90% of the game, and we'll show it to you if you take damage, or like that sort of thing. I really appreciate it. I think it obviously really helps with immersion. And anytime that people build like a really cool world, I mean, as clever as HUDs have gotten, they're still essentially the same shit they've been for like a long time, in most games, in a lot of games. And so, it just feels gamey, like it feels video gamey, and that's not always necessarily how I think devs want you to feel when you're playing their games. But it does sound like you're shooting for a level of immersion that I think is going to jive really well with, world building, and then this hunting sim. The thing about, and I wonder if a lot of people know this about hunting, is that it's not a it's not like an action movie kind of thing, right? Like it's a slow process. It's a slow burn, and you're lucky a lot of times, at least where I'm from. If you go out 5 times, you're lucky to kill something 3 of those tries. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's just
That's more luck.
That would be an incredible ratio, is my point. Yeah, I don't know that people who grew up not in that culture or like around family that hunted or what. I don't know that you would know how slow of a burn actual like hunting, at least in North America, can be, unless you're doing like one of those crazy things in Texas where they go out in helicopters and shoot at like wild packs of boar and stuff. But I think that immersion is going to lend itself to really allowing people to kind of enjoy what you're building.
Yeah, I think that immersion is really important to match with that hunting experience. So to me, that made just a ton of sense. And that totally different style of pacing, I think, can have a huge payoff. Because there's like all the action games stuff, and I love action games also, but I think there is more space for other things. And like some of my other games are, like Hunter Call of the Wild. I love Hitman is another one.
Oh,
you're spending
good.
a lot of time in Hitman just waiting and like getting the right thing set up. And so I really like the feel of that. And then if like shit goes wrong, you got to roll with it and see what happens. That's also really interesting too, as long as it's not just like, oh, you immediately fail, but you have tools to manage it. And I think that's also interesting.
Yeah. I think anytime that a game gives you the opportunity to like set something up, but then also the opportunity to come up with like an exit strategy, essentially, if something goes off the rails, right? Like, hey, maybe if you play your cards right or make the right moves here and there, like you can kind of still salvage the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's way more interesting than like, oh, you were detected, you failed, right? Or like, oh, something saw you, now you're instantly dead. It's just like, okay, cool.
Exactly. That's exactly what I mean. Those instant fail missions to me that's like almost rage quit moment in most games.
It feels lazy sometimes. It's like, you guys couldn't have let me like try and figure this out.
Yeah,
maybe that's not the case.
Creative
poke
in
at the
my
edges
way.
more.
Yeah. Like, let me find a way out of this situation. Like, let me be creative. Hitman does a good job at doing that, by the way.
Yeah, they do.
Like,
yeah, it's like,
you
got caught. It's like, you better kill everyone that saw you and change your fucking costume now.
Ghost of Tsushima was like that too. Actually, like you could be infiltrating like a camp, and if someone saw you, as long as you like killed them before they like set off an alarm or like ran out in front of a bunch of other people, like you could still kind of salvage like a stealth mission there.
Yeah,
and I love that type of stuff. Like I'm thinking as you progress, obviously I'm assuming that the monsters are going to get like bigger and nastier and potentially scarier and that sort of thing. Like what type of like upgrade system are you kind of planning right now? All we've seen, I think, is the trailer. That's all I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty primitive as far as like the hunting tools. I think we were shooting looked like stone kind of arrowhead, broadhead things. Is there going to be an upgrade system in there? And if so, like kind of what do you have in mind for that?
There's kind of 3 tracks to the upgrades. And the first is the different arrow types, because you do start with basically like just a regular arrow, but then you eventually unlock elemental arrows to like control the wind, shoot fire arrows, anything like stop time. And these all combine in different ways. Like you could shoot out a fire arrow to make a fire, but then do a wind arrow in a certain direction and make a firewall that then the creatures would either have to go around it, or if they have no other way, they'd run through it.
Yeah.
Can be like a defensive measure.
I'm getting Far Cry 2 vibes here.
A little bit, yeah.
That's awesome.
In general, I think it's interesting to have a game that's not just wide with like, there's like 40 different arrow types, but instead deep with like, here's how you combine them. Here's how they interact with the world. What happens if you shoot the arrow into dirt? Then it just sticks. If I shoot it into rock, it's going to break. So you just have to like pay attention a little bit more to this stuff.
Yeah, that's really neat. That even I think would make people maybe consider, hey, I've got the shot, but if I miss, there's a rock wall back there, and I don't want to break my last arrow or two. Maybe I should wait until said prey moves out into a different area so that I have, the chance to. Although I guess if you miss and they see you, it's kind of a null point. But
you could distract them also. You can like shoot over somewhere, and they'll hear that and be like, hey, what's that? Walk over there, take a shot over there.
That's really cool. I feel like that it sounds like you really thought your way through a lot of the possibilities when it comes to a hunting game.
Yeah.
The thing is I think a lot of hunting games, it's either like you get the prey or you don't on the shot, right? On that one shot, it's like a binary. Hey, you got this, and it's gonna like now it's bleeding or dead, and you got to go track it, or you missed and it's gone. It ran. That's the end of the hunt, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see like how you can play around with like, I mean, like you said, even if you want to just like create a distraction sort of thing, like how does that play?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of.
I watched your dev blog, and the thing that was so cool to me just watching the dev blog was when you're walking through like the sandy area and it's making the tracks, and then I don't know what to call it. I'm just going to call it a deer for now. It
Messed up
knows
deer
something.
thing.
Yeah, it knows something is wrong, and it sees the tracks and it starts following the tracks. That was cool because I was in my head like right away. I was oh, you can use that. You can lead them somewhere else, and then start walking on stone where it doesn't leave tracks to get them in a position where you can line up like the perfect shot. Like it looks like it's going to give a lot of opportunity to put thought into how you actually place your shot, especially because arrows are going to be limited resource, right? It's not on a HUD. You have to look at your quiver to see how many arrows you have left. Like all those little aspects, and we've said it like the last 2 episodes now, like immersion, but like knowing what you have and what you can use, and it seems like there's going to be a lot of different methods and mechanics to be creative with how you play the actual game.
Yeah, and I really like the duality of that too, where it's going to be following those tracks to try and kill you, but you know that as the player, and you're like taking advantage of that. And that's another one of those tracks that you can also improve, is more or less like levels to your player. So you can improve like, how quiet am I when I do start walking on those stones? Or how strong am I for like, how long can I hold back the bow to get the right shot? Stuff like that.
Oh, cool. So it sounds like there's going to be some light RPG elements there as far as like upgrades and things like that to your character as well, not just your equipment.
Yeah. And there's also like a set of essentially sense powers in the game. Like you can upgrade it so you can see the scent particles from the creatures. You can like feel the tracks to see how old they are. You can like feel tremors if there's things nearby.
That sounds really neat. Any way that like a player would be able to like cover their own tracks, or is it based on essentially like, hey, watch what you're stepping on kind of thing?
It's basically based on what you're going to walk on. Some will track more though. If you go in like mud, that will keep tracking even if you go onto the rocks for a little while. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. I'm just going to walk in water the whole time.
I mean, that makes sense because I've never hunted, like walking through the woods, and thought I need to cover my tracks. Like I've never done that.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like a werewolf wasn't hunting you.
Yeah, whitetail aren't that smart. True. They're damn smart, but they're not that smart.
Yeah. Most have bears where I'm from that'll not really hunt you, but they'll sometimes get curious and walk up towards you. But where I'm from, we have black bear, and they're about the size of dogs. So you just go, "Hey, bear," and it fucking runs away.
I've
gone backcountry camping in like the Shenandoahs, and every single time I went, I would see bears. Like one morning, I like wake up out of the tent, like, "Oh, what's out there?" Oh, that's 2 bear cubs. That's not good.
That's not good
at all. That's a really bad sign, actually.
Yeah.
That happened to me the last
time. For those
of you
who don't know it, you see bear cubs in the woods, walk away slowly because the mama's nearby and very protective of the cubs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. Good old bears. It's interesting. I would have assumed that you guys had bigger bears up there in the UP, being so close
No, it's black bears is really it. Once you start getting west, probably where he's from, like Oregon, you get like your brown bears.
Yeah, you get that.
Big, and are there grizzlies over there?
They just started reintroducing grizzlies into that area of the country, but they're incredibly limited numbers.
I mean, grizzlies and brown bears are very similar. Black bears are very small. There's a phrase. I'm not going to get it perfect, but if it's brown, which is brown bear, grizzly bear. There's another one that's called. It's like
Kodiak.
Cover your vital organs, basically, right? Be non-threatening. If it's a black bear, fight, because they're black bears. They're smaller
generally. Yeah.
You're like, I got this. Come on, bro.
Yeah, all right. You can like, put your dukes up, like punch a bear in the face. But
Like
only
that video
only
of that
if-
Russian MMA fighter. That was you seen that with that dude? He like wrestles bears. They like took the teeth and claws off of them, and in Russia, like that's how the guy like learned to grapple.
That's an odd technique.
It's fucking crazy, is what it is to give your teenage son a bear as a sparring partner.
That's pretty strange.
That
I remember one
I've
rafting
never-
trip I went on once. We were trying to like, set camp for the night, but a bear just kept following us along the river for like an hour. So like, okay, I guess we're just gonna keep going until it stops.
Yeah, I don't know what you do if they just continue to follow you, other
Probably
than
don't
maybe
wanna
try and
just
scare
pull
it
over
off.
there.
But
Well, it depends on what kind it is, but you kind of just keep moving.
Yeah.
Bears are how do I explain this? They're very curious, and it's not desirable.
like you don't want them to be curious about you.
No,
Is that what you're
because they're
saying?
bears.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
they go for vital organs first.
Yeah, well, they're not stupid.
No.
Curious.
No.
Yeah, thankfully none of them have ever actually bothered me. Just see them a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of been my same experience. Is we have black bears in like the mountains in the Carolinas too, and it's DJ. You're right for the most part. You can be like, "Hey, go away!" They're like, "Ah!" Take off running.
I think the
But,
verbiage is "Hey bear, hey." Like I think that's the verbiage you use. I think it's in like the handbooks and whatnot. You're supposed to use
I've seen
that.
someone do that, but like to a grizzly, like in the Rockies, and it was a crazy situation.
That's
But
a
he was
fucking
like, that was
mistake.
his job, was to go on hunting trips with people and make sure grizzlies didn't kill the people hunting. So,
It's a hell of
anyway.
a job.
So
Anyway,
back
we're back on
back to the
track.
game. Talk to us a little bit about the choice to kind of go down the heavy metal road with this game, because when I think of slow burn hunting, use your senses, listen, that sort of thing, metal is not something that would have played into that. So like, how did you come to kind of marry those two ideas together?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. But part of it is there's like a spectrum to the music. So in a lot of cases, it will be like low key, just like ambient more music that's nice and calm, sometimes a little bit more tense when it's like at night and stuff. But then I wanted something big for that moment when it's like that monster has seen you, shit has hit the fan,
Okay.
want something really intense. And just generally, I've thought there's not enough metal games. And often when they are, nothing against those games, but they're almost like satirical of metal in a way where it's like dudes literally headbanging and stuff. But to me, this game is like the visuals in my head when I hear this metal music is like this weird, surreal fantasy world with monsters. So that's kind of where that comes from. It's like, this is the
makes
world
sense.
in my head.
It makes sense.
It's a
'cause
good time
monsters-
for that, I think, right now. Like, I
Good
don't know
time
if
for metal. It's
I don't
always
know
good
what-
time for metal.
I don't know if you're coming out soon, but I never heard metal talked about near as much as I did immediately following the Stranger Things season 4 scene of my guy playing Master of Puppets in the Upside Down.
Oh, I know. I saw that. I was like, see, metal and monsters. That's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
No, it was an amazing scene, and I think it made the genre a lot more popular, like almost immediately. And I mean, it's a lot of people who dabble, like myself. Like, I'm not going to listen to it a lot, but you're kind of like, oh, that might be interesting. Maybe that's not all like, just crazy screaming and stuff like that, right? Like maybe this could be really interesting. And I think now is like a great time to have any type of like association with metal. I don't, obviously you couldn't have known, right? Like, I don't think that you planned that.
Well,
But happy
I mean, if you-
coincidences.
Season 4 of Stranger Things came out like when? When is the last episode?
like July or
months ago,
something.
It was in like June, July. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But Nate, you've been working on this game for like 16, 17 months, right?
Yeah, something like that.
So
But
I mean,
at
you
this
started
point,
it.
I'm convinced everything that I like will eventually become cool because it's like pirates. I loved those for a long time. Oh, that got cool. Zombies.
What did you
loved
say?
those
Pirates?
forever. Yeah, pirates, zombies. Hell, video games. Those were not cool when I was a kid.
No, they weren't. That's true. That's a good point. Being a gamer
you've
is
been-
like a cool thing to be now.
Yeah, like it's like 95% of people under 18 or something are gamers now.
Yeah.
That was so not the case.
I wonder
No.
how many people it is like 30 or under now. Because a
It's
lot of our
probably close
generation
to
grew
that
up playing. It's a lot more than it used to be.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. I thought you said parrots, and I was like, parrots are cool. I have questions. Lots of questions.
I don't know about that. I mean, heck, Dungeons and Dragons too. Like that's cool now.
That sucked me in the last 2 years. I've got a buddy of mine who is he's just a super nerd. He's like the coolest nerd I know, but he's like into all of it. All of the things that are nerdy, he's into it. And he was like, you should play D&D with me while you're out on paternity leave so we can keep up. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll try it out. And now I'm hooked. I bought a bunch of books and have DM'd a few times and play every Thursday generally. So
yeah, I've played a ton of that stuff.
No, it's not Bishop. It's my buddy from work that worked on the Lord of the Rings movies.
Oh, gotcha.
Super nerd. He's got cool credentials too.
Super nerd with cool credentials.
Yeah. But no, I just I did want to kind of touch on the soundtrack and like listening to it in the trailer. I was like, man, this is awesome, but like I have no idea how you're going to track animals to this. But it makes sense that you would have like a really cool vibey ambient kind of thing going on. And the world, I saw an interview that you did with someone, I can't remember who it was, but you were talking about how essentially you were really inspired by surrealist art.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, shit, I've never heard of surrealist art. Let me go and look at some of the stuff. And as soon as I pulled some of it up, I was like, okay, I get it. Like, that's really neat. It's at least like some of my takeaways. I saw a lot of stuff that weren't landscapes. I think you specifically mentioned landscapes when you were talking about it, but it's just like really exaggerated features and things like that. Like not in a caricature kind of way, but more in a bizarre bend your mind kind of way. I don't know if that's an accurate description of the art form, but that's how it kind of struck me. Was a lot of the colors and things like that were like pretty normal, but it was like vibrant. Like I would say the palette was probably normal, but like the color tone was really vibrant. Mm-hmm. And then there was just like accentuated features, whether it was like on a face or in a landscape or something like that, that I thought was really interesting. And I could see a little bit of that in your world building when I was watching the trailer. But yeah, I mean, can you talk about that influence at all?
Yeah, I just feel like surrealist art has always been really fascinating for like, what can you do to really push stuff forward with just sheer imagination and like things that you have never thought of or maybe dreamed about. They're just a little weirder, but also grounded in a way where it's like, that looks like something that could still be something real. It's not just, abstract art, which, that's fine and all, but I like something that looks like it could be a thing in some other world and dreaming of those worlds, which to me is also perfect fitting for that like metal combo of like these giant monoliths and altars and weird culty figures. Like,
yeah,
that just makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about the genre generally. Like, I'm not someone who would claim to, but those things seem like they would be almost stereotypical of the genre. So it definitely fits. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about. I know you were talking earlier about like the senses and things like that you use, but when it comes to like a fully immersive, like no HUD game, how do you envision, or how have you been working on the wind as a readable feature with no HUD? Because a lot of times I feel like that is, you get a compass that's like, hey, the wind is blowing east, northeast kind of thing. But you're going to need to visualize that. So like, what kind of systems have you kind of put into place, and how's that going to work?
I mean, there's two main systems for that, and it's like the way the foliage blows in the wind, like the grass, you can see the direction of it. And the other is once you get that power to see the scent particles, then you can see those scent particles going in that direction.
Okay.
And it's also extra apparent once you get that wind arrow, and then you shoot the wind arrow and you see all of the grass like change direction. You're like,
gotcha. It's interesting. The reason I ask is because that is one of those things that, like, as in real life hunting, right? That's something you definitely need to consider for archery, like bow hunting and stuff.
Oh, I forgot one actually. Fire. Also, the fire will generally spread in the direction of the wind, and if you have the fire arrow out, you can actually just look at the tip of your fire arrow, and it will
see which way it's flickering, kind of thing. That's cool.
That's cool.
That would be a really good telltale. Yeah. The thing that I was thinking about is like how difficult it can be sometimes to read wind in real life if you've not done it. Like, you would think like, oh, you can lick your finger and stick it up in the air and be like, oh, it's definitely blowing this way, but like, that never works for me.
That's true.
Yeah, so it's probably a little more easy than real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that ties into the general feeling of that game of where if you just like sort of stop and pay attention, then you'll notice that stuff.
Yeah.
And I also actually even simulate the heartbeat in the game. So
Yeah,
if you're
okay.
like walking up really steep hills or sprinting everywhere, which is, you know, probably a stupid idea if you're trying to hunt monsters.
Yeah, it's a poor hunting tactic.
Then your heart rate starts to rise, and then like certain sounds start to get muffled. Your vision becomes like tunnel vision.
Is there do you have a mechanic in there, like if you had to sprint and then turn and shoot, that your person's like kind of shaky with the shot, or is it? Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, it impacts how long you can have that back. So if your heart rate is super high, like it'll be really hard to get that good shot.
Yeah.
So then you like stop and crouch, and you can hear the player like calm down.
Yeah. I do think I'm thinking about it now just because I'm trying to think about all the ways that you could make a game around realistic archery. I do think you could go too far with like immersion and realism, because it reminds me, if you've ever pulled a recurve, like not a compound bow, right, in real life, you can almost definitely not hold that bow for more than like, I mean, depending on poundage, right? But generally like a hunting weight, you're like not going to hold that shot for like any more than 10 seconds. That would be an eternity to hold your bow back. But then I was like, oh, the only game that I've ever seen that kind of made that like, hey, you're not going to be able to do this was Kingdom Come Deliverance. And that's the hardest archery in any game I've ever played, ever.
I mean, that is definitely a thing that I have in the game, though. Like,
do you really? Okay.
If you start to hold it back, like you can just see your hands start to shake. Like, this is really hard.
Yeah.
And that shot will just go wide. So
I think it's super interesting because it's real.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it works. But then I think about like all the other games where like if you're playing, especially if archery is like your main go-to, right? I feel like they've almost like held our hands for so long where you can just hold your bow back until your stamina bar is all the way gone, right? But your stamina bar is going to last for like 2 minutes if you're not moving. So you just hold your shot for ages.
I think in my game, you would have to like level up quite a bit before you get it to that point. When you start, it is definitely far, far lower than that, closer to like, I would have to check, but it's like 5 or 10 seconds or something. Before it starts going wide.
That's awesome. No, I have to. Now I feel challenged.
Yeah, it ties into with like why I went indie. It's like I understand why a big AAA game would do that, because some people will play that and they'll just be like, "This sucks. This is annoying."
Right.
But as an indie game, I have like this opportunity to do something that's not for everyone, but it's for this like subset of people who instead think that sounds awesome for me. I'm not trying to sell the game to like 10 million people. Like if 10 million people buy it, great, but that's not the goal.
Nate, did you listen to our last episode?
I haven't heard it. No, sorry.
No, don't lie. You just you're saying exactly. It's like you took the words out of my last conversation. We had a conversation with another indie dev the other day about how like when you're building, like one of the cool things about indie development is the fact that the people who choose to go down that road have this opportunity to build like their vision for the game. But when you're building, you know, your vision and really sticking to it, like you're not trying to make this the widest potential, you know, audience, right? Like you build something amazing that's got a lot of focus, and maybe it's not for everyone, right? Like maybe it's only going to be for, you know, 300,000 people instead of 10 million, but like the people who it resonate with, like they fucking love what you built, right? And instead of having, you know, a whole huge wide audience of people that are kind of like, oh yeah, like it's all right. Like the people who it really hits with, especially when you really just stick to your vision, I feel like it's. I mean, I haven't worked on one of these, so I mean, maybe sales numbers are a lot more important than I know, but it seems like having people that really resonate with your work would be really rewarding. So I think you hit the nail on the head with kind of your outlook on that.
Yeah, I think that's a really exciting opportunity, and you know, as a solo indie dev, I don't have to sell that many if I'm able to actually pull it off. So it's like, well, I mean, we'll see. It's really hard to make games, but
well, I mean, I think you're onto something special. And one thing that I noticed, when I was researching you, I try to research everyone that that comes on the show. But I was watching one of your dev blogs, and you had the certain like sentence that you said that like it got me right there. I was like, yep, I'm a believer. And you said, I'm not making the game I'm told to make. I'm making the game that I really, really want to make. Like that little sentence, it's not an extraordinary sentence, but it tells a lot about like the motivations and of who you are and like the passion that you're going to put into your project. Because you're not that one little sentence. As soon as you hear that, it's like, okay, so from outside people looking in, if they make a comment or something ridiculous, like you're just going to brush it off because you have a vision, you have a way forward, and you're just going to stick to it. Like, and that speaks volumes, especially in the indie industry. Like, that's awesome. I as a consumer who will purchase this game, like that's something I appreciate a lot.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were surprised that I left like this cushy job making these super popular games and all that, but I do think that is really a lot more of a fun challenge eventually to just make whatever I want to make, and like hopefully people do like that. And I tried to be a little bit deliberate about it, kind of. I mean, people like open world games. I feel like hunting games are sort of an untapped market. Like you don't hear about them that often.
I agree.
But that the hunter game is like, I don't know, like 6 million people have that or something.
Yeah, and it's super good.
Like, that's not a small number.
I think the crazy thing about that genre is not necessarily that like people aren't interested. I don't know that it's been executed well that many times. Like I think Hunter Call of the Wild is an excellent example of what hunting games can be.
Yeah.
I mean, another one of the cool things about that developer particularly is it's so accessible. Where like the game itself is not super expensive, and then like it's kind of like there's all these bolt-on modules, right, that you can pick as you kind of go along.
Oh my god, I have so much of that DLC.
I have all of it. I have every single one of them.
I think I have 95% of it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. But, you know, when it's $8, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, somebody worked on this pretty hard, and it's a cool new location. Under $10, like, that's a no-brainer. Of course I'm going to buy this. So I think the fact that they consistently released the DLC once the game came out, and then B, it wasn't like some crazy, greedy thing. It wasn't like, oh, every single reserve's $20. $8 is, I mean, don't get one, you know, lunch out one day and you're done. Like it's easy. So
yeah,
it's
you can play each one of those for like quite a while too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, the
some
Alaska
of them are amazing.
One, yeah, the Alaska one we bought and it was like $7.99. And I think we probably put like 40 hours each into just the Alaska DLC.
Was that Yukon Valley?
Yeah.
We played that one in
Yukon Valley,
Silver Ridge Peaks or something like that.
Silver Ridge. Yeah.
And then the new one we've only played a little bit, but it actually is a really cool environment as well.
That is true.
Yeah, I haven't played the newest one. But that's actually part of why I picked this kind of game also, is because it's like this really scalable game idea.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually on schedule and everything's going according to plan, but you know, if everything didn't, I could like do a smaller game with less regions and that still works. It's not like this linear narrative game where I have to do everything. But also on the flip side, if it does do really well, I could be like, hey, I'm going to add another region. Or what if I do time hunts like in Hitman with their like elusive contracts?
Oh,
like, I'd love those things. Like, what if I did that? Not saying I'm doing that, by the way. 100%.
Yeah. Possibility, though.
Yes, like, it's a really expandable idea.
The cool thing about that, too, is with your world kind of being like one of fantasy, right? It's like, if it came to building DLC, like your imagination could run wild. Like who knows where you could be hunting in the future? You know what I mean? Like that would be so crazy to see. You know, some of these like maybe the thing it made me think about, and obviously there's no tie in here, but I've been listening to this podcast lately. It's a horror podcast called Old Gods of Appalachia, and it's talking about.
I think I've heard about that.
It's really cool. It's filling in this gap for me for this other podcast I got hooked on called Malevolent. I'm now like into horror podcasts. I didn't know it, but Old Gods of Appalachia is like in the Appalachian Mountains, obviously in the eastern U.S., but it takes like a mythical twist on like some of these like dark mountain regions and you know, some of the folklore there in those places is horrifying stuff coming out of these coal mines and things like that. And so I was like, oh, like who knows? Like that'd be a crazy place to some type of like horrific take on that sort of thing. I don't know, but
I mean, I'm 100% behind that. Like I was lead artist on Fallout 76, and if you want to know who's responsible for putting all of the cryptids into 76, it's me.
I haven't played that one yet.
Mothman, Flatwoods Monster, Grafted Monster, Snallygaster, like those were all me being like, yep, let's put on all these monsters.
That sounds awesome.
Neither of us have played Fallout 76 yet, but we actually talked about it like off air
a couple of days
ago. Yeah, we were talking about getting it to try it out because we heard it was pretty rough at the beginning, but then we heard that they kind of evened it out and it, like is now actually like playable. But we talked about getting into that and trying it out.
Yeah, I think it had its issues at launch, but with the launch of like that Wastelanders expansion, basically when the NPCs came back to it, I think that's when it was kind of the game. It was like what people were expecting at that point. Yeah. And you can also just play the game solo. Like hell, that's the way I played it mostly. So for people who are like, I don't want to play a multiplayer Fallout game, it's like, well, don't.
It's so crazy though that
it's like so big.
People have been asking for that sort of thing though for so long. Like I know for myself, again, I'm more of an Elder Scrolls fan if I had to pick one, but like the idea of like, could I go and play like a Skyrim or an Oblivion with buddies? That sounds amazing. So I was like, oh, lucky Fallout fans, like everybody's good. You guys should be pumped. But yeah,
pleasing fans can be difficult.
Oh my God, I can't imagine, especially with the reach that some of those games have had, man. Like that, that's generations of gamers there. Not like it's one small subset. So, well, cool. Nate, thanks for jumping on here and talking to us about this, man. I think this game sounds really, really awesome. There's not a release date yet, right?
Not yet. I plan on announcing that once I'm more sure I'm not just like wrong about that.
Okay.
Because I'm like beating all my time estimates, but I'm like, I know I'm going to reach this point where all this extra work is going to come up as I polish the game to ship.
No reason to give a timeline to until you're like ready to talk.
I did put out a roadmap though for like what's left essentially.
Yeah. Okay.
Basically, I got like all the systems up and like RPG systems, all the powers and the arrows, and now I'm building out the full open world, which is like 5 times the size of Skyrim. It's huge, and I'm like doing the last region now. That's all on track. So past that, I pretty much just have to make the rest of the creatures and then the locations, and then like polish it and go to ship.
Cool.
So I said like what I had left to do. And honestly, I'm not worried about those parts. Like what I was worried about making the game as a solo dev was like the systems and stuff.
Yeah.
Because, my background is art. That's like, what if there's these big unknowns and I have to hire a coder? But Unreal is awesome. And I was able to do the whole thing in like Blueprint, which is all this visual coding.
Dude, the game's beautiful too. Jesus.
Yeah,
that's great. Unreal 5, right? The new one?
Yeah, it's Unreal 5.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Thanks.
Yeah,
is it going to melt my PC?
I'm hoping to optimize it as much as possible. That's actually another reason I stylized it. Is not just so it's like easier to track and all that, but also I use like 80% less VRAM than normal because I just don't have textures in the game. It's all just geometry data with the way Unreal 5 works. You just have all that legit detail there for real. Like that tech is wild.
Yeah. It looks crazy. As like kind of a consumer, as an end user, some of those demos and tech demos where people have been remaking old games and they're like, oh, I just remade this section in Unreal 5. Wild looking stuff. So
there was a guy
the
who
biggest tech
made
leap since Doom 3.
Yeah. There's a guy I saw, I can't remember his name, but he remade Simpsons Hit and Run like completely from scratch, like started over everything. And it was like, but he did it like a pretty quick succession. I think it was using UE5. It could be using.
Is that
UE4.
The guy who's like on YouTube who does like builds games really fast?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my friends sent me that. That was cool.
Yeah, it's nuts. Like I can't even tie my fucking shoes. Like, good God. Just woke up and rebuilt this entire game from fucking scratch.
Maybe you should just make an indie game instead. It's easier.
Shit, I couldn't do that.
It's definitely a lot easier than it used to be, that's for sure. There's no way I could have made this game 10 years ago.
Well,
yeah, it seems like there's a lot more tools.
Technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you asked me like 5 years ago if like solo devs were like a thing making these great games, I'd probably be like, what? Probably not. But
yeah, especially like an open world game like this, which is not.
Yeah. I mean, you're our
not a good idea.
You're our third solo indie dev we've had on the podcast. We had Brian Clark, who made Mortuary Assistant.
Oh yeah,
Great game. Last episode we had Drew Cummins. He's making the Milk Lake, which looks incredible. He mocapped it in his apartment, which is nuts to think about.
Did he just like use phones and stuff now? Because you can just do that with a phone instead of this massive mocap setup like you used to. You have to.
I assume it's smaller than the old school one.
Yeah.
He did say on the show, though, that he had just received the stuff to mocap a sword in his apartment. And I was like, dude, I bet your neighbor's going to be like, what the fuck is this guy doing up there? He's in New York, too, so I imagine it's a crowded building.
Yeah, and then your game looks incredible. When I first saw the trailer for it, I'm like, oh, this is like big AAA title. Because like it looks so good. And then
I also didn't realize that Unreal was that accessible to folks. Like I assumed that they probably charged like firstborn children to get access to that tech. And that's why as soon as I saw the trailer, I thought it was a AAA game as well.
I think they charge you like 5% if you make like $1 million. So I'm like, okay, if I make $1 million, go ahead.
5%, no problem. Y'all got it. Yeah, that's awesome.
It used to be incredibly expensive to license engines.
Oh yeah, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure.
I just want to give a little shout out to the guy in our comments or our chat on Twitch. I would love to ask these questions you're asking, but they're like large run-on sentences, and I've been trying to paraphrase them for the last like 10 minutes. And I can't. If you have another question, kind of shorten it up, make it straight to the point instead of like these paragraphs you're sending me, man. I do appreciate you being part of the chat, though, man.
Yeah, you're the first guest on the show, man. Congrats. Tell your friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nate, thanks for jumping on, man. This has been fun. What's the best way for people to find your work and kind of support what you're doing?
I mean, you can follow me on Twitter, like @Purkeypile, or you can look for just the Access Unseen on Steam, and that has links for everything also, like Twitter and Discord. People can follow that. Cool. And yeah, wishlist the game if you get a chance, because that always helps solo indie devs like me especially.
Yeah, keep hearing that.
Did.
It's true. It's like, it creates kind of like this feedback loop in Steam, where Steam is like, oh, people like this, I guess I should show it to more people. So that's why they're saying that. It's not just to get a wish list and be like, oh, that's cool. It's like
just to get
one of the biggest things
like that. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, all right. Yeah. If you guys haven't checked out the game, go check it out on Steam. Give it a wish list. It looks really interesting. And you can find the man on Twitter. All of that will be included in our show notes. So check it out wherever you listen to podcasts.